everyone. My name is Penny Austin, and I would like to welcome you to always been a big supporter of community outreach such as this event, and I encourage you to go out to their website, agacgfm.org, and check them out. I'd also like to thank Nathan Abbott and Justin Neal for their work today. Nathan is going to be monitoring your questions and comments for me. And now I'm going to share my video to begin the program. So hopefully everyone can see my slide. Again, welcome to our seminar, and I want to thank you for joining me today to discuss this very important topic. I think your presence here today just shows that you are aware of the need to educate yourselves about the threats that are out there, and unfortunately, there are many. Today's presentation is not going to dive into firewall configurations or intrusion detection systems. But instead, we're going to focus on another very critical component of your information system environment, and that is just you as the user. Before we dive in, I do want to make sure that everyone has logged into the conference app. If you've not already done so, please visit aganash.cnf.io and click on the Cyberware webinar session. And this is where you're going to be able to ask questions or share comments. And Nathan's going to be monitoring that for me during the presentation and let me know if y'all have any questions. And just to get familiar with the app, Nathan's going to do a really short demo for us.
Oh, okay, thanks, Penny. On this app, you will, once you log in, can you mute? Once you log in, you will go there and you see a question. And I have entered the question already. You can, that just says you can type your question here, and if you see another question, you can like it, and it will sort it as you go up. And I can see people are on the website and they're liking that question. So this is where you can, if there's a specific question you want Penny to answer, please put it there, and then I can interrupt her and we can get it answered. So that's just how I wanted to share about it. Hold on.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Nathan. I also want to encourage you all to share your experiences, whether it's via the app or just in an email to me after the presentation. And with your permission, I'll share those stories with the other attendees, either via email or possibly the Cyberware site that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. I've just always thought that one of the best resources that you all have as a local government community is each other. And so I encourage you to share with each other. Hopefully no one here has experienced a cybersecurity incident, but if you have, maybe others could learn from your circumstance. So sharing that experience could prevent it from happening to someone else, or at least lessen the recovery efforts. And also, you might have some tips that I don't mention today or something that I'm not aware of. So please, please, please feel free to share those as well. So why is security awareness training so important? Many studies indicate or estimate that around 2/3 of attacks are the result of just poor user practices. And so I believe that by periodically reminding ourselves of the threats that are out there and the red flags that identify those threats, we have a much better chance of just slowing down and recognizing those threats when we do encounter them. I think the more we discuss the schemes and the bad actors use, the louder that little voice in the back of your head is going to be saying, hey, wait a minute, slow down, let's think about this before we click. So when you do receive that unexpected email, you will think before you respond. And unfortunately, it can happen to you. Local governments have become a preferred target in the last few years, while large cities like Atlanta, which I'm sure everybody heard of the ransomware attack in Atlanta, while those large cities have been hit. Smaller local governments have seen their share of attacks as well. And many of those are right here in Tennessee. Maybe the most well-known attack happened in the city of Spring Hill. Spring Hill received a ransomware attack back in November of 2017 that caused them much pain when an employee fell victim to a phishing attack. And I did attend a presentation where someone from Spring Hill had talked about the incident, and I'm not sure of the final cost to the city, but I remember hearing estimates of around $100,000, and that was only the monetary layout. That didn't count the hundreds of hours of overtime that went into restoring the system and the records, because the data backup was also encrypted in the attack. I know a lot of payroll records had to be recreated. The city's utility billing software was unavailable for a lengthy amount of time, so they had to ask the residents to actually send payments in just based on their previous bills. I'm sure that probably didn't go very well. Needless to say, I know it was a very painful experience. And I don't mention this to shame anyone for falling victim to these attacks, but just to show you how easily it can happen. You know, say you're busy and you're focused on an important task. Maybe you're putting the budget together and you're just focused on that. And you're working away and an email pops up. Well, you just want to get that off your plate as soon as you can. So you quickly respond to that without giving it much thought. And then boom, the attacker has your information or you've given them access to government funds. So again, I think it's just so important that we just sit down and discuss these kinds of things often to kind of train that little voice so that we are more likely to recognize that threat when we do receive it. So what kind of threats are out there? Well, if we were in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if you think you've never been targeted with an attack. And if someone did raise their hand, I was going to be a little skeptical because there are so many techniques and tools that can be used by the bad actors to try to steal your money or get your information. And I know there's several a month that I've received either from at work or at home. So today I want to discuss just a few of the schemes used so that you can more easily recognize them when you are attacked. And those include phishing, vishing, and smishing, which I love those terms, social media attacks, and ransomware. And please note that this is by no means an exhaustive list of the kinds of attacks that are out there, but these are the things that we're going to kind of focus on today. First, some statistics. Each year, Verizon issues a data breach investigation report. And in their 2019 report, they estimated about 33% of attacks actually occur because of social attacks, where the criminal just is able to acquire information from an individual via an email. 28% occur because someone clicked on that email attachment or visited a malicious site. And then also the criminals are able to exploit systems that are not properly patched or updated. So let's talk about phishing. I'm sure everyone knows that phishing is the fraudulent practice of sending an email purporting to be from a reputable company or an individual in order to induce you to reveal personal information such as passwords or credit card numbers, or to click on that malicious link or attachment. And it's estimated that 3.4 billion fake emails are sent every day. 3.4 billion. So again, if you've never received one, I think maybe you should play the lottery because you're a pretty lucky individual. So today I just want to share some common themes that we see in phishing emails. This first example is from quite a while back, but I still receive similar emails today. This email is talking about my Outlook account, and I do have an Outlook account. And if you notice, it appears to be coming from someone at a tn.gov address. So at first glance, this seems to be a valid email coming from a state of Tennessee employee. However, when I read the email, I see some red flags. The most obvious one is the request to see my username and password. Your system administrator will never request you to send your credentials via an email. So that was a big red flag. You also notice the use of the word immediately. Another red flag is the use of urgency. the attacker wants you to feel rushed so that you respond quickly without really thinking it through. And unfortunately, when we received this email, again, it's been several years ago, we did have a couple of the people in our office click on the link, and it took them to a form. And
All right. This is Nathan interrupting Penny here. Her connection kind of went down on me a little bit. So getting that back up. Hopefully you can hear me as we continue on, as I work with Penny to get this working. I think you're back. Hold on. Yes, you're back.
Okay, Nathan says I'm back. Sorry about that, Al. What would a webinar be without technology problems? So I'm not sure where I got interrupted, but again, this is an email. That I received quite a while ago. And again, some of the red flags here were the use of the word immediately. That's a red flag because there's usually a sense of urgency because the attacker wants you to feel rushed so that you respond without thinking through. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of people from our office that did click on this email link. It sent them to a form. They entered their login and password and submitted that form to the attackers. Fortunately, immediately after they did so, they realized that they'd fallen prey to the attack, and they changed their login and password and reported the incident to our IT staff so that we can monitor closely our network for any suspicious activity. This is an example of a scheme that we've seen a lot of lately, a request to buy gift cards. This particular email was sent to me from somebody posing as the president of an organization where I serve as an officer. And so what are some of the clues here? The first one I noticed is that very strange email address, the P234567889. Obviously, that does not look like an email address that I think Jennifer would have. Also note the grammar mistakes and the awkward wording. It says, need you to make provision for gift cards. I would reimburse you when I'm through. The attacker had most likely gone to our organization's website and gotten my email address, and then they saw Jennifer's name as from the director of officers listed. And because they learned that we had that business relationship, they hoped that I would trust the email and respond to it. And this type of phishing is sometimes referred to as a business email compromise because they do know there's some sort of business relationship between the victim and the person that they're impersonating. I have heard a lot of that a few of the county employees have responded to this scheme. They receive an email that appears to come from someone in their office asking them to buy gift cards. They do purchase the cards, and then the attacker emails back requesting the codes on the back of the cards, and then, of course, the attacker uses those cards to make online purchases. This is another example of a business email compromise. Tammy Steele works for our office, and she has a business relationship with the utility districts that we contract with. The attacker somehow learned about that relationship and tried to use it in the attack. Fortunately, in this situation, the individual at the utility department did recognize the red flags and did not respond to the email. Of course, I'm sure had the person responded, they would have clicked on that link. It would probably most likely have downloaded some malicious software onto their machine. So some of the red flags here include, again, that odd email address. If you look up there, that's a very odd looking email address. And the fact that the email discussed an invoice. The utility districts do not pay us, so this request seemed odd to the utility district. However, you would not believe the number of individuals who would just click on that link just out of curiosity. Another flag here is the tone of the email. It's very casual. Called you a few times without success, decided to reach you by email. I need to know the status of the invoice below. It's way past due. That's a very casual tone, and Tammy's emails would always have a professional tone. So that also seemed odd to the recipient as well. One last example, this particular email exchange resulted in about $38,000 of county funds being transferred to the attacker's bank account. And in this case, the finance director received an email from what appeared to be the county mayor's email address asking him to wire the money. What you see here is just only one of the emails from pretty lengthy email thread back and forth. It started out with, hey, I need you to wire some money. I'll give you the details later. The finance director responded by asking for the purpose of the wire transfer. The attacker posed as the county mayor and responded that, it's for consulting. I'll send you the invoice later. And it went on, et cetera, et cetera. So actually, this attacker was actually investing a little time into this scheme by keeping up that email correspondence back and forth. Unfortunately, at the school department in the same county about the same time, they received a very similar email. But for some reason, in that situation, the attacker only requested $19,000. Perhaps they were feeling a little more guilty for stealing from the children. Law enforcement did get involved in this, but by the time they got to the bank account, the money that the money was wired to, the bank account had already been closed. Fortunately, the county was able to recover the funds less a deductible from their insurance company. Now, I'm going to discuss insurance a little bit later. So what are some of the red flags here? We've talked about the odd email address. Well, in this situation, the attacker had spoofed the county email's address so that it looked like the county mayor's valid email address. However, most of the time, if you hover over the email address with your mouse, it will usually display the true email address. So it's always a good idea just to hover over that email address to see where that email is actually coming from. This email also emphasized the sense of urgency. It has to go out today. And also look at the language used, the general funding account. And here in Tennessee, we use the term general fund. So this was also odd language that was used. And I don't have examples of these, but some other schemes that we're seeing a lot of lately relate to payroll. And these are also business email compromises. One involves emails to a payroll clerk that appear to be coming from their supervisor that requests W-2 information. And we did have a few years ago an incident where a payroll clerk received an email. She thought it was coming from the director of schools. She did send out the W-2s of the entire school department to the attacker because she thought he was the director. Another scheme relates to routing numbers. An email is received by a clerk from an official's email address, and the email requests that a change be made to the official's bank account information in their payroll system. And of course, the clerk makes the change, and then when payroll day rolls around, the clerk receives a call from the official asking, why didn't I get paid? And of course, the funds have actually gone into the bad guy's account instead. So I do recommend, if your office doesn't already have a method for verifying changes to bank account information, that I suggest that you put something in place that doesn't rely solely on that email. So let's just review some of the red flags that you might see. The sense of urgency. They want you to respond quickly without thinking. Spelling and grammar mistakes. Many of the attacks do not originate from countries where English is the native language, so you see a lot of grammar mistakes. But I will say that attackers are starting to become more aware of this and are starting to use grammatical check software more often. The unrecognized email address. But remember, like I said, it's pretty easy to spoof an email address so that it does look like the email address that you're familiar with. So always remember to hover over that email address to make sure that it is the email address that you think it is. Fictitious website links. I didn't have an example of this one, but again, you'll see a link in an email. You can hover over that link to make sure it directs you to the correct address. So in this example, you might get an email from Bank of America saying that you need to check on your account, but in the text of the email says that the link is to bankofamerica.com, but if you hover over that link, it may say bankofamerica.com.co.ru, and you know that that is not Bank of America's valid URL. So it's important that you look at those links before you click on them. Again, the unfamiliar tone and language, and also the request for sensitive information. If you get an email that's not a routine email that you receive and they're requesting sensitive information, it's always a good idea just to pick up the phone and call the requester to make sure the email is legitimate. And it's also a good practice, instead of just hitting reply and responding to the email with the information, that you actually go out there and create a new email and type in the requester's known true email address instead of just hitting that reply. That way you know exactly where that email is going, because emails can be configured so that the reply is sent to address other than what appears in the what appears to be the sender. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but these are some examples of those texts that you get from the attackers, and those are the smishing. These have some of the same red flags as you would see in the phishing emails. They have that sense of urgency. In this particular one, it talks about there's only 43 left, or that something bad's going to happen if you don't respond. So these are very similar to the phishing, which is the phone calls that you receive. I'm sure everybody has received the phone call claiming that your Social Security number has been suspended or the IRS is freezing your accounts. So just know that the attackers use those phone calls as well. And also just realize that the same kind of red flags exist on social media. So those links that you get on social media, you need to be careful on what that you know that link is coming from a legitimate source. So just keep that in mind as you use your social media accounts. All right, now I'm going to switch gears to ransomware. And this gets a lot of news coverage because its use is really on the uptick, and governments are often a favorite target. I mentioned Spring Hill earlier, but there's been several other attacks of Tennessee local governments. So if anyone's not familiar with ransomware, this is a malicious software that encrypts your files or steals your data. The attacker then requests payment to unencrypt those files or send back your data. It also uses a sense of urgency. Usually, you can see in this example, there's a countdown clock. Payment is usually requested in some sort of cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin, because it's difficult if not impossible to trace. And some reports indicate that even if you do pay the ransomware, you might not get your data back. And depending on what think tank research you look at, governments or victims of ransomware are usually asked to pay about 10 times as much as the private sector. The average ransomware for a government victim is around $340,000, while private victims is usually around $36,000. And of course, these costs don't reflect include the costs associated with restoring your data or updating your email services or cleaning up your network. That's just the ransom itself. So how is ransomware launched? Well, you can get it in a number of ways, mainly being via those phishing attacks that we just talked about when you click on that link in the email or that attached file. And remember that attachments like PDF files can also launch malicious software. So it's not only the link in the email, it can be the attachment as well. Another way to get it is visiting a compromised website. And this can be done easily by clicking on an ad. So if you're reading the Tennessean and online and you see an ad for a product or service that you would like to have more information about, it's best to open a new browser window and search for the site rather than clicking on the link that could redirect you to a malicious site. So if you're looking up there and you see that, you're reading the paper and then you see that really cute ad for the shoes on Zappos.com, instead of clicking on that ad, open a new browser window and type in Zappos.com, and you're much more likely to go to the legitimate site. And again, you have to be cautious when you're clicking on those links in the social media posts as well. So what can you do? It's so important that you keep your operating system and other software updated. Remember that screenshot of the ransomware that I just showed you? That was the WannaCry ransomware that was unleashed a few years ago. And it's estimated that it had infected around 200,000 computers. And it actually used an exploit that Microsoft had actually already corrected and patched. However, because the victims had not kept their Windows operating system updated, they were infected. So it's so important to keep your operating system updated. It's important that you use antivirus software and keep it up to date as well, because that software can detect ransomware. Also, it's so important that you back up your data. If you have your data backed up to another location that's not connected to your network, you may be able to restore those files without having to pay that ransom. So back up, back up, back up. There are also some other policies and initiatives that you can put in place. Do more of what we're doing today. Make sure that you and the others in your office participate in some type of security awareness training. You can subscribe to services that provide this type of training, or you can seek out other resources such as just presentations like this one at various events that you might attend. It's also important that you find out what kind of insurance coverage you have to protect you against losses should you fall victim to an attack. And you need to know what kind of insurance coverage you have. Will the policy pay for expenses associated with the recovery? Will the insurance company simply opt to pay a ransom minus a deductible instead of covering those costs? Will the policy cover credit monitoring if personal information is breached? Also, keep in mind that some insurance companies are going to want to be sure that you're doing your due diligence in protecting your systems and your data and your money. So there could be clauses in there in the contract that say that they will not provide coverage if the government is shown to be careless or negligent in their practices. So you just need to be aware of those kinds of clauses as well. Use strong passwords. Best practices say that passwords should be at least 8 characters, but the longer the better. And you also need to include those numbers and those symbols in those passwords as well, because that makes them harder to crack. Also, it's important that you have a written plan to follow should you have an incident. So know who to call and how you can restore your data from the backups if you do need to do that. So what if you are a victim? Follow the steps that you've outlined in that plan that I just spoke of. That plan should include information for contacting your vendor or your IT department, reporting the attack to the law enforcement, and contacting your insurance company. If the attacker has actually gained access to personal information, you need to follow Section 4718-2107 of the TCA. And this statute defines personal information and states what steps should be taken. Personal information for purposes of this statute is designed as the first name or first initial and last name in combination with a social security number, a driver's license number, or a financial account number in combination with the security code or the password that would allow you to access that account. So if you discover that there has been a breach of this kind of information, you must must disclose the breach to the affected persons within 45 days of discovery, unless law enforcement feels there's a legitimate need to withhold this information if they felt like that it would affect the investigation. And then if notification involves more than 1,000 persons, you must also inform all the consumer reporting agencies and credit bureaus. I would also like to just add something from a personal note. I just feel personally that it's important to be mindful of how you respond to the individual that may have clicked on that link or visited that fictitious site that launched the attack. Well, it's so important that we stress the need to be cyber aware. We also need to be kind of refrain from shaming that individual as well. Because if you make an example of that person, so to speak, the next person that thinks that they may have clicked somewhere that they shouldn't have is going to be much less likely to report it. And that's going to give the attacker more time to wreak havoc. So the importance of being diligent should be stressed without a doubt, but I think we need to be very mindful of how we respond to an individual should they fall victim to an attack. You know, I've been obviously stressing the need for security awareness training. Well, I want to spend just the rest of our time talking about what we think is a very good resource for offering that kind of training. The Comptroller's Office has developed a site that can be used to educate employees. We launched this site back in March, and we continue to update it with more resources. And you can link to the site from our Comptroller main page, or you can use the link that I provided to you in the event invitation email. And obviously the URL is also presented here at the top of the slide, tncot.cc/cyberaware. And there's really three main sections to our site. We have tips, we have videos, and we also have resources. Under the tips, you're going to find information on how to spot phishing emails, how to secure your laptops and wireless networks, advice on establishing those strong passwords, information about putting together those plans, and the importance of those good, clean backups. There's a link to definitions of viruses and spyware and ransomware to just educate individuals about what these malwares are. And there's also a Q&A section and a link to news stories that relate to cyber attacks in Tennessee. Under the videos, you're going to find some short instructional videos on security, Wi-Fi networks, malware. This is where we'll also be posting today's webinar so that anyone who could not attend today can view it later at their convenience. Under the cybersecurity resources, there's a link to some free security awareness training offered by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. There's a link to State of Tennessee CyberAware site. And you'll also find here a list of questions that you should ask your hardware and software vendors. And I know that many local government offices don't have an internal IT person, and they rely heavily on the county or the city's IT department, or even upon their accounting software vendor for their computer operations. It's so important that you, as the department head or an official, have an understanding of what safeguards are in place to protect your systems. So it's important that if you don't know the answers to these questions, that you do consult with your IT staff or your vendor to find those answers. And some of the questions are questions about, how is your system updated? Are your backups configured so that they're not going to be vulnerable to a ransomware attack, as well as some more technical questions regarding firewalls and wireless networks. So I really encourage you to go out there, view those questions, and find out those answers. There's also a link where you can report a cyber attack or data breach to the comptroller and to the FBI. There's also a link out there to request a speaker. So once it's safe to go out and speak, we would love to come out to your office and speak to you about security awareness training with a group of local government employees. So all you have to do is go out there and complete that form to make that request. And I just encourage everyone to use the site as an educational tool for your staff. Again, I can't stress the importance of I think, of just talking about this on a routine basis so that it is training that little voice in the back of your head, or it is in the front of your brain when you're looking at, or you're going through your email account. I think I skipped a slide. No. So wrapping up my raw remarks today, I hope that you can see now how cybersecurity is really about you as the user, and it's not just a technology thing. We've all got to be educated on how to spot security threats and have a plan in place if we are attacked. This is my contact information. If you want to reach out to me after our webinar, please feel free to do so. I've enjoyed speaking today, and I hope this information has helped you become more cyber aware. Even if you didn't learn anything new, again, I think just repeating it sometimes helps us to slow down when we do get that email, that we are more mindful before we click on that link or that attachment. And I've left plenty of time for questions, so I don't know if we have or comments.
Yes. I'm looking on that AGA website here on the IO app. The first question that came up is there a PowerPoint available? They didn't see a link, and we will be posting this PowerPoint on the Cyber Aware site, and we could email it out to you as well. The next question is there training that we have put together that can be shared amongst municipality employees, best practices and what to do? And again, Penny pointed out the Cyber Aware site. We feel like that is all encompassed, both counties and cities. Under useful links, there was a place to give free cybersecurity training as well. Another one is, I think this is a comment, or I'm not sure if it's a question. I have a way to make MS Outlook show the name of the sender as well as a true email address in the inbox. I think there is. I don't know what that way is off the top of my head right now. But if that person who you asked that question, they actually know how to do it, that's obviously something I can post on the Cyber Aware site to share with everybody as well. Another question, Penny, is there somewhere I can report alarming activity alerts from my firewall so that I can see if it's related to large spread threat? And I'll answer that, and then Penny, I'll let you chime in on as well. Right now, there isn't a single source to where you can submit it. You can go out to the internet, the Security Center for Internet Security, and you can kind of see their malicious codes that are going out. That could be a good resource to see if that kind of traffic, but to actually submit something, I'm not aware of any. And I'll Penny.
Yes. Yeah, I think we do have a link to that resource on our cyber site. And as far as the question about we had a question about someone coming to the office to perform a computer system cyber health checkup. I'm not aware of anybody from our office that we would be actually doing a checkup, so to speak, but we would be happy to come to you and talk about the things that you do need to have in place, as well as, again, going through those questions with you that I mentioned that are on our site, just kind of going through those and maybe explaining those a little more. And more than likely, we realize with a lot of local governments, they are very dependent on their vendor and just kind of with you all getting with your vendors to get those questions answered. And I do not know the way to on Outlook to show the name of the sender, but I have a feeling the person that posted this does. And if he could or she could email me that, I would definitely share that with the attendees today.
And the follow-up question about doing a computer health checkup. If you want one of us to come out and speak or just come to your office, you can email Penny, or you can actually go to the Cyber Aware site and submit a form in there, and then it will go to our email, and then we will follow up with you on that as well.
And again, like I said, I think you all are each other's best resource. So if there's anything that's popped into your head as we were going through this that you would like to share with others, I would be more than happy to, if you want to email me, I would share that, and you're comfortable sharing that with the attendees, I would definitely do that. I just think, you all are just each other's greatest resource. And like I said, hopefully none of you out there have had experience with a cyber attack. But if you have, I do think that just sharing that information could help someone else, like I said, either avoid it or at least speed up their recovery time. So if there's no other questions, I think we will give you back part of your lunch hour.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. And later today, I will be posting this video out on our cybersecurity website. Again, thank you very much.